The battle between the Ice and Fire kingdoms. In a world where magic reigned supreme, there were two mighty kingdoms that ruled over the elements. The Kingdom of Fire, a land of blazing deserts and molten rivers, and the Kingdom of Ice, a frozen realm of glaciers, snowstorms, and eternal winters. These kingdoms had coexisted for centuries, each fiercely protecting their dominion, yet the two had always lived in an uneasy truce. But the balance was fragile, and it was only a matter of time before the tensions between them would explode into war. Chapter 1. The Prophecy. Long ago, the ancient seers of the Ice Kingdom foretold a prophecy, one that spoke of a time when the lands would burn and the skies would freeze. The prophecy told of a great battle that would decide the fate of the world, one that would be waged between two forces, the fire-wielding warriors of the south and the ice-breathing soldiers of the north. But what the seers could not predict was how the battle would unfold, nor who would emerge victorious. The rulers of both kingdoms were aware of the prophecy. King Ignis, the Fire King, a man with the fiery spirit of his people, had a heart as passionate as the flames he controlled. His kingdom was built upon the burning embers of volcanic mountains, and his army was made of warriors who could summon infernos with a mere thought. King Ignis had always believed in his kingdom's supremacy. After all, fire could burn through anything, even the thickest of ice. On the other side, Queen Isolde, the Ice Queen, was as cold and calculating as the blizzards that swept across her realm. She ruled the Ice Kingdom with an iron fist, commanding her subjects with a stern will and an unshakable belief in the power of ice. The people of the Ice Kingdom were known for their resilience and unyielding endurance, as their homeland's harsh conditions made them the toughest of warriors. Queen Isolde was convinced that ice was the element of purity, capable of preserving all things, while fire was a destructive force that could never be trusted. For years, the two rulers had met in secret to negotiate peace, but the underlying animosity never ceased. The fire burned hotter, and the ice grew colder. There was always the suspicion that the other would strike first. Chapter 2. The spark that set the conflict ablaze came one cold, wind-swept night in the icy mountains of the north. A caravan of fire merchants, carrying precious gems and rare ores from the southern lands, found itself caught in an unexpected blizzard. As they tried to navigate the treacherous slopes, their caravan was ambushed by a band of ice raiders who stole their goods and left the merchants stranded in the freezing cold. The news of the raid spread quickly, and King Ignis, furious at the audacity of the Ice Kingdom, demanded retribution. He believed the raid was a deliberate act of war, a challenge to his authority. "The North dares to attack us in our own lands," he thundered. "This will not stand." Queen Isolde, on the other hand, denied any involvement, but the flames of suspicion were already ignited. Her people claimed they had only defended themselves from trespassers, but the damage was done. King Ignis called for the mobilization of his entire army, and the Fire Kingdom prepared for war. As the fire armies marched toward the Ice Kingdom's borders, the ice soldiers readied themselves. Queen Isolde, determined to protect her kingdom's sovereignty, called upon the ancient ice mages to fortify the borders with massive glaciers and towering walls of frozen rock. But deep down, she knew the coming battle would not be like any other. Chapter 3. The Clash. The first battle occurred at the border of the two kingdoms, a vast expanse of frozen tundra that stretched for miles. It was here that the fire and ice forces collided with a thunderous roar, a battle of magic and might that would be remembered for centuries. The Fire Kingdom's warriors were clad in armor forged in the hottest flames of the volcanoes, wielding swords and spears that glowed like embers. Their battle cries echoed through the night as they charged, unleashing torrents of fire upon the ice soldiers. The ground shook as columns of flame erupted from the earth, and the skies above grew thick with smoke. But the Ice Kingdom was no less formidable. Queen Isolde stood at the front of her forces, her icy blue cloak billowing in the wind. With a single wave of her hand, she summoned blizzards that swallowed the flames whole, freezing the very air around them. Ice arrows rained down on the fire soldiers, and massive ice golems rose from the earth to crush their enemies. For hours, the two armies fought, fire clashing with ice, each side refusing to yield. The Fire Kingdom's heat scorched the ice, but the Ice Kingdom's cold froze the fire in its tracks. The land became a battlefield of steam and smoke, the two elements fighting for dominance. In the heart of the battlefield, King Ignis and Queen Isolde faced each other, their eyes locked in a fierce gaze. "Your fire will never be able to defeat my ice," Queen Isolde declared, her voice cold as the winter winds. "And your ice will never break my flames," King Ignis retorted, his voice burning with defiance. With a swift motion, he summoned a pillar of flame that soared high into the sky, a beacon of his fury. Queen Isolde raised her hand, and a massive glacier surged forth, colliding with the flame. The resulting explosion sent shock waves through the battlefield, creating a huge crater in the ground. Both rulers stood firm, but the battle raged on around them. Chapter 4: The Unforeseen Alliance. As the war between fire and ice continued, both kingdoms began to suffer great losses. The fires of the south had scorched the earth, while the ice of the north had frozen the rivers, making it impossible for either side to gain a decisive advantage. It was clear that neither fire nor ice could claim victory alone. In the midst of the chaos, a strange occurrence began to unfold. The earth itself began to tremble, and the skies darkened with an unnatural storm. From the center of the battlefield, a new force emerged, a powerful entity neither made of fire nor ice, but something far older and more dangerous. It was the elemental force of Earth, awakened by the prolonged battle between fire and ice. The ground cracked open, and from the depths, enormous stone giants emerged, their eyes glowing with an ancient power. These creatures of stone, once thought to be mere legends, now roamed the battlefield, crushing anything in their path. The fire and ice armies, realizing the true threat, found themselves momentarily united in their struggle for survival. King Ignis and Queen Isolde, still locked in their personal rivalry, were forced to set aside their differences. They called upon their armies to join forces, not to fight each other, but to fight this new, more pressing enemy. For the first time in the history of their kingdoms, the forces of fire and ice worked side by side, their magic intertwining as they faced the ancient threat. Fire melted the stone, and ice slowed its movements. Together, they managed to weaken the earth giants, but the battle was far from over. Chapter 5: The Final Confrontation. After days of fighting, the earth giants were finally defeated, but at a great cost. Both kingdoms were left weakened, their soldiers exhausted, and their cities in ruins. King Ignis and Queen Isolde stood together, staring at the wreckage of the battlefield. Neither spoke, but the weight of their shared experience hung between them. The prophecy had foretold of a great battle, but it had also foretold of a new beginning. The Fire and Ice Kingdoms, having seen the destruction their rivalry had caused, realized that neither side could stand alone. There would have to be a new way forward, one that required compromise and cooperation. In the ashes of the battlefield, King Ignis and Queen Isolde made an unexpected decision. They agreed to form a council of both fire and ice leaders, where both elements would have equal say in the future of the world. The fires of the south would no longer scorch the north, and the ice of the north would no longer freeze the south. The two kingdoms, once enemies, would now work together to rebuild a new world, one where fire and ice could coexist in harmony. And so, the battle between fire and ice came to an end not with the defeat of one kingdom, but with the beginning of a new era forged from the flames of war and tempered in the cold of winter.